morning and welcome to the City of Murfreesboro Stormwater Advisory Committee meeting of September 2009. Mr. Haley, I believe the major thing we're going to do today is review what we've done and talk about the promises we made and the promises we've kept. Is that somewhat a summary?
That's exactly right. That's one of, you're right. I'm looking forward to getting started. So,
well, since we don't have a quorum, we won't consider the meeting. I know that, I mean the minutes of the last meeting. That was the first thing on the agenda. But since we don't have a quorum, we'll go right next to the next item.
the next item is a proposed memorandum of agreement with MTSU, the city and MTSU. So,
yeah, I just want to give you a brief history. It's not a very long memorandum of agreement, and that's by design, but we've spent quite a bit of time putting this together. Back in January of 2007, MTSU recognized their need to get a permit for their separate small sewer system, which they're, in the state's eyes, they're considered a separate MS4 from the city of Murfreesboro. And so we sent them our information, our application, all of our information that we supplied the state. And about 3 months later, we sent them, there's a special application for properties that are regulated by the Tennessee Board of Regents, university system, and it's kind of a short form. But that was in March of 07. So at that time, we kind of we got into a dialogue of possibly there was a co-permitting option that the state had available, and we kind of started our dialogue. Then we created a draft co-permitting application in August of 07 and sent that to MTSU in November of 07. Well, it sat around a while until about October of 2008. So I don't know if there was some pressure against TBR or to the universities to finally kind of, hey guys, you really do need to get a permit here. So we kind of reignited the dialogue in October of 08. And what you have before you now is about 6 iterations or 6 different drafts that we went through with the facility maintenance folks, Jay Wallace, Gerald Cauldell, David Gray, Joe Whitefield, and we kind of gone some back and forth on some wordsmithing. The intent never really, changed that much. We did put in the minimum measures. There's a comment in there that states the MTSU, there's nothing as part of this MOU would change their legal status or their sovereign immunity, meaning that we as a city, they would not be subject to our city code, but that they would in essence agree to the elements of our stormwater program to the extent that everybody stays happy. And there's a pretty easy little clause in here that says at some point if anybody gets upset or doesn't agree, then they can opt out of the co-permitting deal. We really wanted to get this in place before the next permit application, because the permit application is where really the milestones and the benchmarks and the things that MTSU more in the policy, in the form of policy, and the city, in the form of ordinance, is going to define to the state what we're going to do over, I would assume, the 5-year cycle. We haven't seen that application yet, but this really just states that the city and MTSU would be willing to work together in filing one application defining what we intend to do over a 5-year cycle when that application comes about. I know MTSU is taking this to the Tennessee Board of Regents for their review, and we in like manner wanted to parallel that by bringing it forward to you. Since we don't have a quorum today, obviously that'll be postponed, but that's really the intent of the memorandum of agreement, is to agree to jointly file a permit application, and that application is really going to be more of the definitive milestones that each, the city and MTSU would strive to achieve. So I'll stop there, and we'll look at this another day, and we can move on to the next item. Unless you have any questions, be happy to answer any questions.
application going over the annual report that we sent you. And this is, you might think of a draft annual report. We have to file this to the state by the end of September. So I will go through this, and as you said, this is a review of last year and a little bit of a look toward next year. And to remind you, our permit, a big part of it is a set of tasks that fulfill these 6 minimum measures. And these are federally defined minimum measures of a small MS4 program. In our application to the state 6 or so years ago, we listed a number of tasks under the different minimum measures, and this is a total of them, and we'll come back to this at the end. But you're familiar with many of these tasks, and so I'm just kind of putting these up as a reminder. I'm not going to go through not going to talk about each of the tasks, and many of them for this year, which is our 6th year under the permit, a fair number of them were continue what we're doing the previous year and even the previous year. Street sweeping is one of those. We sort of had the same milestone every year, continue a street sweeping program. So there's quite a few of these 33 were just carried over from last year. But we did have some new ones. So I'm going to hit on just some of these and remind you of them. Some of the ongoing program elements of our stormwater program are our website with information about the program and forms and so forth. Responding to citizen calls and keeping a record of those, that's a part of public education and outreach and our illicit discharge detection and elimination program. Those calls, by the way, this has been kind of a, maybe I put this up here because several departments in the city receive calls related to stormwater. Storm drain labeling is a program element that we haven't had much activity with that one, but it's still in our permit. One of the public education items is to prepare brochures as needed and send to the public. And this is one that we created this year. You've heard about this maybe in a previous SWAC meeting, creating a streamside buffer caring for Murfreesboro streams. And this we mailed to properties along Sinking Creek, right along the creek, who have riparian land. And we also mailed these to businesses in landscaping work, nurseries and landscapers, with a letter that basically told them, please read this and implement these practices alongside streams if you're doing work there as much as you can. Our tree day, which Josh Upham headed up, and I think he's talked about that before in a SWAC meeting, that was in March of 2009, and we the numbers, I think we gave away 300 trees, maybe 200, and we had quite a few property owners, 29 property owners come by picking up trees to plant. So we're going to be doing that next year in the Lytle Creek Basin. The Parks and Recreation Department, you've heard from me before about that, about this. They train children and youth mainly, also adults. So we also this year they implemented a record-keeping system for all their classes that's focused on stormwater. So they keep a record and they of what messages they communicated to the classes. So I just made some notes of the classes. They had classes in those records from 5 to 56 students, and then a few events reaching 100 or up to 800 persons. So that's the Turtle Day, is the big day there, over 800 people. You've heard us talk about Project WET, and this year, this year there was training through the Discovery Center on 3 occasions. 54 teachers trained, and 41 were Rutherford County and city school based. Also, you remember the county MS4s. I think all the municipal separate storm sewer systems, or the cities, Laverne, Smyrna, Rutherford County, and Murfreesboro, have all gotten approval to move forward with the Project WET, a contract with a Project WET advocate, which looks like it will be the Discovery Center, to serve the school systems. Let's see here. In addition to broadcasting the advisory committee meetings, which it looks like we just had one last year in the 2008-9 fiscal year. And by the way, those are available. If you haven't checked out the city's website, they are archiving these, the audio and the video. So you can see this meeting tonight anytime you want. I think it's rebroadcast, but it's archived there for a while. So thanks to City TV for that. And that's useful. We sometimes need to go back and, now, who was it that made that motion, and who seconded it? So anyway, we broadcast. City TV puts out other messages that we're developing, and they are producing. And I think a couple this year. I think we got the Sturgeon Release documentary on, and that's just a good message about improving water quality, and that was Mr. Crabtree knows about that in the Cumberland River, and there was some sturgeon released there because of that, kind of symbolic of that water quality improvement. Okay, just a note: we do take calls from citizens and residents and businesses on a number of stormwater issues, but also city staff. Actually, in the records I have, city staff identify more problems like that. So I just made a note of that. Also a component that water and sewer, we're very aware of it, but one of the components of our permit and promises we made to the state, I meant to have the details here, but the Water and Sewer Department's ongoing sanitary and storm sewer inspections and rehabilitation. So that affects the quality of the streams as well as maintenance of the stormwater system. Go ahead.
Just to interrupt a minute, and this may be something at some point we communicate in more depth, y'all, to the committee, but we do have a very extensive sanitary sewer rehabilitation plan with the intent of taking a lot of old clay, concrete sewer. There's some Orangeburg pipe, which is an unusual material that was used back in the 70s, to keep stormwater out of the sanitary sewer system. And we've got our own operation and maintenance crews. Terry Taylor's the superintendent there. We've got a ongoing maintenance agreement with In Situ Form, who does pipe lining. We've also, it's secured in place lining where they don't have to do any dig to rehabilitate the pipe. And we've seen some very good success in reduction. We've got permanent flow monitors throughout the system. Jim Harris used to kind of look over that. Valerie Smith has taken the reins on that since Jim has left us. But in essence, when we have these kind of rain events that you see today, stormwater gets into the sanitary sewer, and our objective is to diminish the amount that gets in such that no sanitary sewer would overflow out of manholes or cleanouts in people's yards. Our long-term flow monitoring under dry weather versus wet weather has shown that we have really been taking some good chunks of rainwater out of the sanitary system, and so we're spending up to, our goal is to spend a couple of $1 million a year on rehabilitation, which is about replacing about 2% of the sanitary sewer system per year. But it's not something that we report as a stormwater milestone, but it is something that does help the quality of the streams by minimizing or eliminating overflows of sanitary sewer into the waters. So just wanted to make y'all aware of that.
Keep going. And one of the 6 minimum measures is illicit discharge detection and elimination, and that program includes, as I mentioned, receiving calls when people observe problems, and of course an ordinance that prohibits illicit discharges. Another part of it is screening, and we've done that up to this past year by walking streams and looking for outfalls and whether there's flow there. This year, Bruce Ross and Josh Upham, I think, did all of this. We used kind of a method that EPA proposed years ago, which was to imagine a grid over, I think Josh talked about this before, over the city, and we go into that grid, find pretty much the lowest point in the stormwater system within this about quarter square mile, and see if there's flow in the system. So I think I have the numbers right. There were 3, maybe 4 active flows that we found in dry weather, but the evidence for all of those was that they were groundwater oriented. So as I've heard from other cities, it's not uncommon that cities find more of these illicit discharges through reports and seeing them in the field. But this is a good method. So I was really glad that we did that this year. Here's one of our screening points. I think all of the components of the construction site runoff control program this year, as far as the annual report milestones, stay the same. I have those areas listed. I think I have this right. This year we permitted for land disturbance 87 projects, total of 567 disturbed acres, and one estimate had this total maybe site acreage more, but the disturbed about 567.
Robert, before you leave too far that illicit discharge subject and the methods of determining them or identifying them, it's one of these days, hopefully we'll have some winter and it'll get cooler, and I believe a lot of municipalities use this method. I believe Nashville uses the infrared
right
flying over them, and they got a lot bigger budget than we do, but is that anything that may be cost effective at any time in the future? I know we found a lot of them, but as fast
could
as
we
we're
find
growing,
more and more quick? I have not talked about that for a year or two. I know that would serve our sanitary sewer system as well. So
Yes, we it's not a specific budgeted item, but I think it's relatively inexpensive, and I believe you've asked about this before, and we can follow up and get pricing and do that. I mean, it's been done before. At one point we had it slated to do, and I think it was prior to our stormwater fee, but now that we have the revenue in, it should really be something we can do.
well, it may not be cost effective. I don't know. I just wondered if maybe you'd already explored that and determined that it was not. But
no, it's actually, the last time I looked, it was very affordable, and you got a lot of bang for your buck.
especially if you know where your springs are, because a lot of times the springs have a warmer temperature, and so that'll show up on your infrared. So if you can identify springs and then do your thermography, you have a better read of what's going on.
And, to really, Josh and Bruce, to go out and to go to these grids and to see all those low points during the hottest, driest time is, I really commend them. They do a great job. They've really taken ownership in making sure that our GIS system is up to date and as accurate as possible, and we know everything that's going on. So they do a real good job.
Thank you.
So that has advantages for stormwater, and then spring identification and sewer as well. The fifth minimum measure, post-construction runoff, and here are just some kind of a summary of that. Our stream buffer zone is a part of that program. We added up the length of stream buffer or water quality protection area regulated to date. That ordinance went into effect in 2007, so we have 3.9 miles and 27 acres. Some of that's an overlap on some of that 3.9 miles includes both sides of a stream along the same length, but that's the total. Since the implementation of the post-construction runoff quality ordinance, a new component of our plans review is for meeting the stormwater quality ordinance, and my estimate is about 35 projects reviewed or in the pipeline of the review process, and we are maybe 20 are in construction, or 20 projects with these kinds of controls are under construction. I think 4 have been completed with certificates of occupancy issued and engineer certifications provided to us. On these projects, the property owner submits to us a maintenance plan for those systems, kind of long-term maintenance plan, and then we record a maintenance agreement, and I think we've recorded 6 of those.
Out of curiosity, Robert, have you all
Reported.
performed any maintenance on any of the BMPs yet, or is it just getting them in place now? Have you done any inspections to require maintenance?
Right. No, we haven't, and that'll show up here in a minute in
Okay.
this presentation, but we haven't. So we're just getting them in.
started.
Yeah. And so thanks to Paul Barber also for his kind of careful inspections of these. So we're as they go in, or audits. So
Good.
Okay, I wanted to show you some pictures of one of these. This is kind of neat. You remember our showing photos of one of the sites. This is Capitol Business Park, and this is now Superior Traffic Control. And what you see in the foreground there is a stormwater conveyance that passes through the property from above it, and there's water off-site that flows under their pavement and through that channel. And then in the center there is a bioretention area. And then over, let's see here, that's just another view from the other side of that bioretention area. And this was a filter strip with the concrete there to make the water as it flows through level out, so it flows through the grass evenly as possible. So this was under construction, and then here's some pictures recently. Well, you can see September 17th, and it sort of highlights look at the turbid water that's flowing from off-site. It's not being treated, but the water in the pool, there is some some discoloration there. The little, well, I don't have, can I point? I probably can't point to it. That screen's kind of, anyway, there's an overflow on the edge of the water surface there near the gravel bank where the water flows off the parking lot. And so we have treatment happening there and little clearer water going out than would have. This is water flowing into the filter area, and then kind of a downstream view. And it looked like that's working pretty well, providing some filtering of the water. So that's what this is what we're looking for as far as treatment that's being required on new development. The sixth minimum measure is pollution prevention and good housekeeping at city operations, and these are the task items, and in fact I think these are the milestones that we included in last year's annual report. And we didn't do all of these. I'll get to that in just a minute. We did a few. Just a reminder that the street sweeping is pulling up a lot of dirt and grit and so forth and trash off the streets, keeping it from out of the streams. So this was the tally, and you would find this if in the annual report. Out of those 33, we met 27 milestones, and you can see the post-construction, we didn't hit all of those, or pollution prevention. I'm going to go over those here. One of the items, under illicit discharges, we said we were going to, in addition to some education like the riparian buffer education, one of the items that I really included, and I think I forgot that I included this, was to focus on Town Creek. And we listed we were going to do door-to-door contacts in the Town Creek watershed. That's kind of a high-priority watershed for us for bacterial pathogen contamination in the stream. So I still think that we will do that over the next year. And when I say door-to-door, it doesn't necessarily mean we'll go to every door of every person or business in Town Creek, but some personal contact rather than just mailers. And this is kind of a pilot for us to see how that works. Because we really, other than incidental, we've not done any, organized face-to-face contact with businesses, say, in a watershed. Let's see. These are incompleted 6-year tasks, so these are those 6 or so. And standard operating procedures, it's something that I think last December I was standing here saying we need to develop standard operating procedures, and we have a number of them drafted or in process. But we've heard more from the state this year how important that is. So anyway, we need SOPs for just all sorts of work that we're already doing, but it would be more streamlined, and it would prevent some of the questions that come up, or give us structure to answering those. So let's see. The dates here are the date by when, right now in the draft report, we'll have these done. Corrections to the BMP manual, they're really just a few that have been notified to us. I think we've corrected a technical memo and gotten that on our webpage. We have a few corrections to the BMP manual to make. Beth, what you just asked about inspections of post-construction controls, we're supposed to have a procedure for that. We don't, so we'll have that by June of next year. Okay. And we'll have probably 40 or so or 50 controls in place. So, okay. City employee training, that really the only reason that we didn't hit this was there there was a package of information that I have and need to send out to the department directors, and so we'll do that by the end of this month. So 2 of these 6 will get done by the end of this month. And then another update our SPCC plans. So those are incomplete 6-year tasks. We also, there's another section of the permit that asks for, in addition to the 6 minimum measures and those programs, any other tasks that we look to do the next year. These are the ones we listed in the permit from last year, and we did partially, I think, all of these, except for reapplication for our NPDS permit, where it's not time to do that yet. The state hasn't given that to us yet, so we haven't done that. But we have done training of city staff. We have done 3 of 7 SWIPs completed. There's more of those to finish. So there we go. I have talked about just about everything that we didn't get done there. Just to let you know, here's some SOPs that we've drafted. They hadn't been reviewed by all departments or city management as necessary, but we actually have an SOP for developing standard operating procedures, because there's several departments involved in stormwater, and so there's questions that come up. So we need kind of a structure as to, okay, how are we going to develop these? And then the others, construction site runoff, post-construction runoff, enforcement and civil penalties, all of those we have drafts or partial drafts on. And then we probably need an SOP for how we prepare the annual report. So that's one, just the timing and who's responsible for producing what information, those kind of things. Okay. I'm talked a whole lot longer than I thought I was going to. Year 7, just this is probably projects or tasks we're going to be doing in the next year. We probably will be reapplying for our MS4 permit. A part of that is better measurable parameters. Maybe don't really know exactly what that's going to look like, but we will continue with the Project WET initiative. As I said, Josh Upham will be heading up a tree day for Bible Creek Basin, and we've heard from the state that they're wanting to be able to have from us a stormwater management plan, that all our policies, procedures, and all kinds of reports all in one book. So we'll be working on that. And this came up at our last meeting. An outreach to commercial properties, existing commercial properties in particular, not the new development, for management of stormwater quality. And we are thinking we will maybe incentivize that with a fee credit. I think that's it. So,
Robert?
Yes, sir.
You have 3 different categories here for ranking the appropriate.
Yes.
And you've got inappropriate, nothing in that. You've got minimal, good, and superior. And everything is good or superior other than, and this is on page 4, we've got storm drain labeling minimal. And I wonder what we're measuring that against. What's our measuring stick there? Is it the total that are not labeled? I know that for some time the city, all the storm drain covers that are installed have that warning, drains to the river, do not dump, or something like that, cast into that storm drain. And I tried to find out when we started that, and the closest I got was a long time ago. So I just wondered how we'll know when we get over to the good or superior. And I wondered if, when we decide what that is, how we could incorporate that maybe into the WET project, maybe help us accomplish whatever objective we decide on.
You're right. I mean, schools and those wet teachers could label storm drains. I mean, that's one just immediate, direct way.
How will we know when they've done a good job? Is there a way to identify how many of those we have that are not labeled? The old ones that were put in would be the only ones, of course, that would be labeled because
I think we haven't quantified those that aren't labeled. At least, not that I know of. I bet we could do that, though, by dates of installation, perhaps, and when that. The fact this is labeled, I can't remember this is labeled not ineffective, but what's the term?
minimal.
Minimal. Really, that's just a kind of an empirical judgment in that, for instance, this past year we didn't have any storm drain labeling teams. Now, so just from that sort of so that's focused on our storm drain labeling. It's not whether or not these should be labeled or how many are labeled. It's just how is our program, how effective is it, that just our
The
storm
activity, we just didn't have any activity on that. I know year before we had I think an Eagle Scout project and maybe some other.
So, hopefully, in the next year, the commercial outreach to the businesses, labeling storm drains will be a part of their, or an option for them to improve their stormwater management. That would just be a part of it. So I'm hoping that we see some storm drain labeling by businesses this next year. And I have not tried to generate storm drain labeling teams.
Well, that's an optimistic approach, but I seem to believe that it'll be a lot easier to get enthusiasm of this wet project than it will commercial operations.
Well,
personal opinion, maybe.
Okay.
Like many of my other opinions.
Maybe I could
unfounded.
Alleviate a whole lot of effort. We could just propose deleting that. So,
Robert, how about, I know the city has done a lot of water quality monitoring.
Yes, we didn't really this year, and that we did last year.
Right.
And then we do this, of course, just our kind of minimal monitoring for the illicit discharge. And, we have not done anything. I wonder if there's any time left for the pathogen. We have regularly talked about it, but we haven't submitted any for that. Maybe we have another week or two.
In the time frame. That's right.
Well, Mother Nature provides us with a pretty good way of monitoring water quality, kind of like a canary in the coal mine. There are certain critters, either their presence or their absence indicates that it's getting gooder or worser. And if we could put some points along the Stone River and record what critters indicate that the water quality is better or worse, and then periodically, we could have there's TWRA has biologists that do that sort of thing. It seems to me like that would be
we can do that.
Something that would get a lot more people involved. It's a lot more interest.
Okay.
Only engineers get excited about these numbers and all this boring stuff, but the rest of us, we need a little more interest in that.
Did you have any comments, or you were just kind of wondering what we did this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any plan for year 6 or 7 out next year out?
As far as monitoring goes?
Right now, based upon our very limited understanding of what the permit may have in it.
Well, I can't, we don't have any funds approval.
Okay.
We've talked to a couple of environmental engineering type firms about bioassessments.
Right.
And I think we've maybe even gotten a proposal and some costs on one of those.
Good.
The city already does that because of our NPDES permit for sewage treatment plant with on the West Fork Stones River.
Okay.
And so but that's all we've done. So we haven't written a plan and gotten
Okay.
a proposal. So I think I'm going to add that to the year 7 tasks, and
That'd be great.
that gets approved. So
That'd be good.
okay. Do you know if what's your sense of most cities are they getting into the bioassessments and?
Yeah, and especially if you listen to the direction, at least, that TDEC is going with the permit, besides your TMDL watersheds, it's going to bump it down to the impaired watersheds, impaired streams. And so if you take that same monitoring protocol and, put it on your 303 delisted streams, you do have the benthic macroinvertebrate analysis as well as the visual. So, and that does give you, besides just the chemical makeup, it gives you those sensitive critters that are in the stream. So, identifying those streams that are impaired now and kind of getting an idea of what that will look like, for the next 5-year permit probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Doesn't mean do it all in year 7.
Okay.
But certainly to at least kind of start preparing for what we believe is going to come in the permit.
As far as I know, we don't have a number for TMDL, for our stream, do we?
Not an effluent limit, no.
Okay, well, that's the reason I mentioned the critters.
Yeah.
I see.
And I think one of the things that we need to show is some progress in the right direction. And until somebody comes up with a formula or something to determine TMDLs, that's probably the best measurement we've got.
Well, they're TMDLs for certain parameters, but not for sediments. So using the critters for sediments is probably the best water quality indicator, actually, for all of those. But
I'm through with that. So.
Sure.
No, just one thought I had as Robert was going through the permit report. There have been some assessments, what am I trying to say, for audits of TDEC coming in at some Phase 2 cities and coming in and auditing the program.
Are you saying some consequences for not meeting?
I don't know if there's been consequences, but there have been audits, and I don't know, I think there's been some notices of violation written. But I wanted to make you aware of that there's a pretty extensive checklist of things that they're looking for. So a lot of these SOPs and a lot of the record-keeping requirements are things that we are trying to tighten up. So we expect that we'll be audited on down the line, and we're preparing for that and trying to bolster our record keeping and so forth. But and we can let you know how that goes. The only thing I would say is that it's not necessarily benchmarked against our permit application. It seems like there's a whole litany or list of things that they have created that are kind of like the stormwater management plan that they want written in a book form somewhere. We've keyed off some of those audit elements to actually implement in our year 7 milestones, because we weren't aware that we were supposed to have a stormwater management plan in book form, but the audit sheet says we are, so we're moving in that direction. So we're in for we can't wait. We're looking forward to it.
I guess that was under agenda item, other business. Is there anything else?
I do have one question. I wanted to ask about the progress of Old Fort Park water quality planning.
I didn't exactly skip over it, but you remember approval for developing construction documents, and I've had a little contact with the designer on that, but we haven't seen construction documents yet. So, but they're working on it, the surveying, the planning for the bioretention area, and so
Good.
Thanks for asking about that. And I know that Mr. Gunther he had, because of a death in the family, had to take about a week off, and so. But other than so it's moving, but
It's
we
moving.
haven't seen the.
Good.
So
Good.
yeah, and
So does that mean we're ready for this last agenda item? Is that the one we've been looking for? Adjourn?
is this the one? Oh, okay.
All right. No further business before the committee. We are adjourned.